Hello, and welcome to my spoiler review of Fantastic Beasts 3, The Secrets of Dumbledore. Is it the last Fantastic Beasts movie? I suspect that it is, although I think it's the end of the Fantastic Beasts story. I think it's all about Dumbledore and Grindelwald now. That's, I think, all any of us care about. And I'll just basically tell you now, I would be content with that to continue on maybe as like an HBO Max series or something like that. Give it like a Game of Thrones budget, but I gotta see that final battle between them. It's the greatest wizarding battle of all time! And they made us sit through 3 movies. So I needs to see it. And now I'm really invested because of the love between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. It's a spicy story. I love it. So we have a lot to discuss about this film. I think it's not a perfect film. It's deeply flawed, but it gets a lot of stuff right. I do think there's good stuff here. And the first thing that I want to discuss is the LGBT representation in the film and the recent headline that cutting just 6 seconds of dialogue, 2 lines, is enough to erase that representation. That's simply not true. I mean, it's very unfortunate that Warner Brothers didn't hold its ground on keeping this beautiful story intact. It's really, really well done. But the idea that you could erase it with just 6 seconds, that's clickbait and wishful thinking on the part of the government or governments that end up censoring this film, because it's deeply ingrained in the movie. The 2 lines that are cut, and we're going to talk about it right now. The 2 lines that are cut are Dumbledore telling Grindelwald that he was in love with him in the opening scene of the movie when he's talking back to their past, and he's like, "Why'd you create the blood pact then?" He's like, "I was in love with you, you dummy," obviously. And then when he's talking about his past later on in the movie, he describes it as the summer Gellert and I fell in love. So just those 2 little lines have been cut. But then what about Grindelwald's haunting line to Dumbledore after he's defeated when he says, "Who will love you now?" That was a crucial line in the movie. Maybe they just redubbed it with a different meaning to it, but I mean, it's all there. All they're doing is just pushing it just right below the surface. It's there if you are at all paying attention. So let's talk about Dumbledore and Grindelwald's tragic romance. I love tragic romance. As you know, Dr. Zhivago is one of my favorite movies of all time, and the ending annoys me every single time. But that's the great thing about tragic romances. You keep coming back, just like real tragic romances. But anyway, I want to also just outline to you, since this is the spoiler review, how it's the framework of the entire film, and therefore cannot be removed. It's the spine. You can't rip out something's spine and have it still stand up. All right, so the film opens with, this is important, Dumbledore and Grindelwald together. Dumbledore opens the movie alone and he ends the movie alone. And that's very, very important because in the beginning of the film, he's quickly joined by Grindelwald, right, for tea. Yes, they've broken up, but clearly not only does Dumbledore still have feelings for Grindelwald, but he's a safety net. We all know what that means. That feeling that no matter what happens, you still might, be able to fall back with this person, right? It's just like you feel you have someone, even if it's not working out so well, right? So I thought that was really well done. Their blood pact made when they were still in love. I don't know if Grindelwald ever really was in love with anyone besides himself, but when Dumbledore was in love, and it's literally worn around Dumbledore's wrist, his heart on his sleeve, as I pointed out in my non-spoiler review. You gotta love that smart writing. But once Grindelwald tries to take a life, Credence's, and Dumbledore and his brother, who's Credence's actual father, stop Grindelwald, that somehow overrides the original promise of the blood pact. Like the blood pact's like, oh hell no, this guy is a jerk. Forget it. It's all bets are off. So their eyes meet at that moment. It was just such an incredible, incredible moment. I think not only because they knew it was on and they could suddenly attack each other, but then they paused too. I think it was just like the acknowledgement of like maybe like the love of that period of their lives, finally having the door shut on it. I think it was an acknowledgement of that intimate connection between the two of them. I mean, it was just such a personal level. I just thought it was incredible. And both Jude Law and Mads Mikkelsen made that moment electric. Oh, I was really impressed with that. And then when they were fighting, they were keeping each other at arm's length, but that also means they had their hands on each other's chests and their hearts. And they could feel them beating. And I thought it was a very sensual, wonderful, heated moment. I thought it was great. I mean, that battle, that wizard battle they're ultimately going to have, is going to work on so many different levels. It's going to be a sexy, crazy battle if we ever get to see it. Grindelwald is defeated, and he retreats with that line, "Who will love you now?" Again, Grindelwald, did he ever really, truly love Dumbledore? Was he just manipulating him? I mean, that's clearly a manipulation line when he ends. He's like, "You might have defeated me, but now you're all alone." I mean, it's definitely an abusive relationship. And Dumbledore, it definitely has that element to it. And Dumbledore, and we will probably never know for sure how Grindelwald feels. It might be a mix of both. I'm not saying there isn't an attraction there, but it was amazing. And then it got even better. So the film ends with a wedding, Jacob and Queenie getting married, and the possibilities of love for other couples who are coming inside to this warm, cozy setting of Jacob's Bakery where they're having the wedding. It has a hearth, it has an oven because it's a bakery. It feels very much like a home. So Dumbledore, though, will not go inside, quite tellingly, instead staying outside alone in the cold, deserted street, still on the move. Having not found a place to settle down and call home. And he's haunted still by Grindelwald's words, that he's now truly alone and he's heartbroken, and his relationship with Grindelwald seems truly finally to be at an end. That thing that always connected them, which I think come to think of it, Dumbledore, the whole movie is like, "Oh man, I wish I didn't have this blood pact," but it still was something that tied them together. Because Grindelwald even says, "We could decide to destroy it." And Dumbledore's like, "No, that's okay. I like it." So, but that phase of his life, that phase of that relationship is done. And it's scary to look into the unknown, into the future, your unknown, and not know if there's anything else in store for you. So the last place he wants to be at that moment is a wedding, a celebration of love. So instead he walks down the street into the darkness with the snow gently falling, just really feeling that loss. I just thought that was incredible. And I think everybody knows what it's like to be in a dark place and not want to be around other people who are having a great time. I just thought that was really, really well done. So it starts out the movie with him alone, but then with Grindelwald, and then it ends the movie where he's alone and there's no one there to join him. It's great. Chills, goosebumps, really well done. I just love that. Now, he still has to hunt Grindelwald down, of course. They made that clear. They got to have this big wizard battle. And that's also probably weighing on Dumbledore as well. He's like, "Damn, I do have to see this guy again. I got to defeat him." But I got to tell you, Dumbledore is such a catch. He's such a snack. And nobody, there doesn't seem to be an issue in the wizarding world with the LGBT community. So no one ever seemed to have an issue when it was brought up, and Dumbledore talked about it quite freely with everybody. So I don't know why he's not getting set up with friends left and right. I would be like, who wouldn't want to date Dumbledore? This guy's amazing. You think there'd be a line out the door for people to see if he'd be interested in them? So, I mean, true, he might never get over Grindelwald. Dumbledore has to like you too. He's got it. Love is a two-way street. But I would hope that the wizarding world changes it so that he does have another romance in his life, even if it's not at the same level as Grindelwald. And even because, we know, although we never see what Dumbledore does on his off time from Hogwarts, we don't know what he's up to. But I know a lot of you have taken issue with the fact that he ended up alone. I think that is a problem. And I think that they have an excellent opportunity to fix that here with Dumbledore meeting other guys. So I think that I've talked about the importance of the representation here for the LGBT community. And yes, there have, of course, been other movies that have focused on that. But in every other case, I would say 99% of the cases, and certainly never a movie of this scale, that's been the point of the film. Like, that's why you would go to see the film, to see this LGBT story. But here, they've taken a story that's already been ongoing for a very, very long time, that has a very large audience that's along for the ride at this point, and they take a chapter, or in this case, hopefully a long series of chapters, and they make the focus, not a supporting character, not something like that, but the main leads. Very important. We're seeing this shift to LGBT leads. You're seeing it in Love, Victor. I guess Harley Quinn's kind of doing this a little bit too, actually, come to think of it. I love that series. Love it so much. And so I guess the Harley Quinn is the closest to what you have here, where you have two leads, an LGBT storyline in an overarching story that's not its raison d'etre. That's not the whole reason it exists. And that expands the audience for these type of stories and characters. And I just think it's really wonderful. And so that's why I felt this film was so important. All right, now let's talk about Credence, because, Dumbledore's illegitimate nephew. Like through all these movies, all 3 movies, this storyline has been an absolute mess with Credence. That Credence is an Obscurus. I still don't totally know what an Obscurus is. I know that Dumbledore's sister, who tragically was killed in that fateful summer day, she was an Obscurus as well. But he's related to that sister because he's actually the illegitimate son of Dumbledore's brother Aberforth, who's the barkeep. I mean, that's just all totally lost. I mean, it never came into focus. Ezra Miller doesn't even look anything like any of the versions of Dumbledore we've seen. He kind of looked a little bit like the actor they cast as Aberforth, but I was like, that must have been a very different woman than he was. It was the mother, because it doesn't look like he's related to this family at all. I mean, in fact, in the last movie, when Johnny Depp's Grindelwald told him he was a Dumbledore, we were all like, no way. I mean, we didn't even believe it. We were like, that doesn't make any sense. Credence's power as an Obscurus never really manifested. It was just a dark, wispy cloud. And it never made any sense. His fight with Dumbledore in this movie, while interesting due to their charisma as actors and getting to see Dumbledore in action, you're like, oh, it's a taste of what's to come. But that fight was impossible to follow. That one was particularly difficult to follow. Like that water drop through the window, Dumbledore blew on the window and then like a water drop went across the street and hit Credence in the forehead. Was the fight over before it ever began? I didn't understand. How could Credence be defeated so easily? He's supposed to be this really powerful being. It was ridiculous. That fight scene was like pretty, but it was impossible to follow. And while I was moved by Credence ultimately communicating, at first I was like, who's he talking to with the mirror writing? But then when he was like, I'd like to come home, Pops, I was like, oh, that's sad. I let him come home. And Dumbledore and Aberforth, that moment where they saved his life, even though he was dying, and that's why the Phoenix was around him so much, it visits those who are about to die soon, like their sister had, the situation with her. But, and I like that he finally got to go home. I like that Credence eventually got to go home. He finally got what he wanted. But I didn't get to see it. So I felt really robbed. I never saw this storyline. I never saw the storyline at all. I just saw it like in the peripheral vision. They were like, Credence, oh, we got a happy ending, but you still can't see it. And I'm like, not even a shot of him at home with his dad giving him some of that soup under the covers and a phoenix in the window? Come on, man. All this backstory with the Dumbledores, by the way, should have been shown instead of told. Show, not tell. All of it. And wow, the Dumbledore household back in the day was like Bridgerton with all the saucy hookups. Like, how do you not show that? HBO Max series, perhaps? I'd be interested. I mean, we know how it all ends, but people still love prequels, so let's give it to them. All right, now let's talk about the beasts. Finally, in the 3rd film, I felt the beasts were really actually for the first time well woven into the story. I thought that the scorpion-type creatures, the little ones in the German wizard prison, were a bit much. They were scary though. But with Newt's dance to hypnotize them, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But my audience laughed. And as the scene went on, I also chuckled. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cute and kind of funny. And I also liked the big one in the pit that was killing everybody with its tail. That added some real and much needed danger to this film. We really want this to seem like adult wizards. So I liked that. And the oozing skeleton in a Harry Potter movie, I mean, they've had dark stuff before, but just that bundle of bones still in the clothing with like all the saliva over it and the acid and stuff. I mean, I thought that was great. I really loved it. It added to the Indiana Jones type quality. I think that there's a smidgen of here and that they could have even more of. As I told you, my favorite description of Dumbledore is Indiana Jones and Henry Jones combined into one. All right, so then of course the Qilin, a majestic rare creature capable of seeing a person's soul and bowing to one who is truly good. That's a real Chinese legend, actually a legend of picking leaders. And then I had no idea, by the way, that in that sequence when Newt goes to find the Qilin and Credence catches up with him, I didn't know they were in China. I thought that was not well enough established. But they were twins. They were twins. Credence thought he got one and he delivered it to Grindelwald, but Dumbledore had the other. I don't know how it helped him see the future. I thought that Grindelwald got that capability because he killed it and like played around in its blood and that gave him the ability. But how did Dumbledore get the ability then? In his watch, no less. I was like, you got to explain this stuff better. Grindelwald kills his, again, not only to see the future, but he brings it back so that he can fix the election and have it bow to him, even though, of course, his soul is anything but pure. Dumbledore, meanwhile, hides the twin so that he can save the election and be like, here's the real one. everybody was very believing. I'd be like, you need more evidence. I guess, the other one collapsed and died. So I don't know. I think Grindelwald still should have tried to sell it. He'd be like, oh no, it died just now for the first time. You guys, this is crazy. Dumbledore did it. Just keep going, Grindelwald. Just keep trying. But then anyway, with the briefcases, I thought that was a pretty good gag with the different briefcases, but I knew Bunty would be the one to have it because nobody would suspect Bunty. And I can't believe that nobody thought of that. They'd be like, well, wait a minute, who would I never go for? Bunty! She's got it. I thought that when the twin Qilin kneeled to Dumbledore, although it was hanging out with Dumbledore a lot, so maybe it just liked him. But anyway, when it kneeled to Dumbledore, I thought that was such a beautiful moment because Dumbledore, of course, had shared earlier in the movie all the pain and guilt that were hanging over him because he felt responsible for his sister's death. And he was always his whole life trying to make up for that. And I thought it was very meaningful that it showed that even though he had done something, as Newt told him, even though he had done something bad, inadvertently, he had not meant to, you are able to make up for that with your actions. I thought that was great. I wish they'd held on that moment a little longer. Also, again, this is so crucial that you have that person who is considered the Jimmy Stewart of the group. As I said, a lot of George Bailey and Dumbledore as well. But the most exemplary person in all of the wizarding world is the LGBT character. That's very, very important. And again, I think a great element in this film. But Dumbledore doesn't want to lead. He's like, there's got to be somebody else here with a pure soul. And that poor Qilin was like, are you kidding me? I was just born a few days ago. I want to sit down. But he's like, all right, I'll go find someone else. And so, of course, he kneeled in front of Santos, which I knew he would, because Santos was the only one who ever had any banners during the entire movie. I was like, where is Lou's supporters and Lou's campaign? Like, does he have an ad campaign fund? I mean, this was ridiculous. Maybe in the Chinese cut, they'll take those 6 seconds and put in some Lou supporters. But I was like, it seems only Santos is running a campaign here. So I wish the movie had a little bit more suspense as to who was actually going to win. But they didn't. All right, so, win the election. I did, though, appreciate the politics of the film, and particularly the commentary on how a malevolent force is able to take over because people in charge dismiss it as too ridiculous to be effective, and that people will surely know better. Well, I think we've all learned that lesson. I wish all the scenes hadn't taken place in the same ballroom or the same dining room in that German, wizarding offices, but it was a beautiful dining room, I will say. I liked when Hicks stopped the assassination attempt. I thought that sequence was great. And, Queenie being in the room and Jacob wanting to talk to her. And I thought that end moment where Jacob and Hicks run slow motion into the center of the book to be teleported out of there, that was really stunning. That was great. I thought that was a really cool moment. And on that note, I much preferred, speaking of politics, Mads Mikkelsen's Grindelwald to Depp's. I thought that by stripping away the theatrics, he made Grindelwald so much more sinister. As I said, the simple act of removing the memory of Yusuf's dead sister, Lita Lestrange, from his head, even though it was tormenting Yusuf, was one of the cruelest things I've ever seen a character do. That was all that Yusuf had left of his sister. And, she'd been physically robbed from him, but now Grindelwald made it so that it was as if he had never known her. Certainly not emotionally. That was just so cruel. I couldn't believe it. And I think it really, that and killing the baby Qilin and then resurrecting its dead body to be a puppet, this is pretty dark stuff. But I thought that was, they were able to establish, and thanks to Mads Mikkelsen's performance, just how horrible, and also how cruel he is to Dumbledore. Really interesting, really, really well done. And Grindelwald, his reasoning is that this horrible memory is going to motivate Yusuf to maybe move against him. So of course he's going to remove it. So he's like, yeah, I don't know why I would be upset with with Grindelwald. We're good. But on that note, I have no idea why Grindelwald kept trusting Queenie that she would tell him what everyone he was actually thinking. She seems to be just telling you what she wants you to hear, or she thinks you want to hear, Grindelwald. That was like a ridiculous system. He's like, is Yusuf going to move against me? And she's like, no. I was like, clearly, she is not telling you everything that she is reading in his mind. So that was useless in my opinion. Once again, Jacob and Queenie's romance was quite captivating, and I thought their little tete-a-tete toward the end of the film was really beautiful. I thought their wedding was really sweet. She looked beautiful in her dress. She looked absolutely gorgeous. And it was appropriate for them to have that wedding after we'd seen the cake earlier in the movie with the groom knocked down. You got back up, Jacob. That's all that matters. And then we saw Tina, of course, at the very end of the movie. Her picture was earlier in the film, inside Newt's suitcase, come to life like Wizarding World pictures do, and I thought that was very charming. And it was great to see her come back. We know that J.K. Rowling has them get married in her story overall, so I guess they're back on that path now. And it was very nice to see her. But I feel that Newt, Tina, Jacob, and Queenie's stories are done. 3 movies, they had their trilogy. I'm ready now just to focus on Dumbledore hunting down Grindelwald. And again, to see the greatest duel ever fought between 2 wizards. I mean, I do feel this franchise needs a break, but at least one more movie, or again, an HBO Max series of Dumbledore versus Grindelwald. And keep Jessica Williams as Professor Hicks. She's great. I want to see adult wizards doing cool, complex stuff. No more of these students and their learning and stuff like that. We don't need it. I think let's just go right to the teacher's lounge, man. I'm ready. So that's my spoiler review of Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. What did you like about the movie, and what did you dislike about the film, if anything? Dislike, maybe it's too strong a word, maybe it's not a strong enough word. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. And also, whether or not you'd like the series to continue, and if you do, what you would like to see happen next. Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.